Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz accepts the party's nomination as vice president at the Democratic National Convention. More than a dozen trucks from aid agencies cross into Sudan from the Adre border crossing with Chad, bringing much-needed essential goods to a Darfur region threatened with famine. And joy in Tanzania as a new electrified commuter railway is inaugurated, offering safe and reliable transportation connecting Dar es Salaam to Dodoma. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast with coverage of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The governor of the upper Midwestern U.S. state of Minnesota, Tim Walz, accepted his party's nomination as vice president during the day 3 of the DNC. VOA Midwest correspondent Ken Faribault has the details.
Opening the third day of Democrats' National Convention in Chicago, U.S. Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey outlined the night's theme.
Welcome to night 3, and tonight is about freedom.
While some of the programming provided speakers opportunities to address topics including reproductive rights, environmental issues, and border security, much of the messaging focused on what Democrats say is the choice in the November election.
Kamala Harris for the people. And the other guy who's proved even more than the first go-around that he's about me, myself, and I.
Former President Bill Clinton was one of the most anticipated speakers of the evening. Clinton, who has attended every convention for Democrats since 1972, drew from his own experience in the White House to explain why he believes Vice President Kamala Harris is the best choice for president.
Kamala Harris will work to solve our problems, seize our opportunities, ease our fears, and make sure every single American, however they vote, has a chance to chase their dreams.
But the key moment for Democrats was hearing from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who accepted his party's nomination as vice president.
It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States.
For many in the crowd, and those watching the convention around the country, Walz's speech was a sort of introduction.
Now, I grew up in Butte, Nebraska, a town of 400 people. I had 24 kids in my high school class, and none of them went to Yale. But I'll tell you what, growing up in a small town like that, you learn how to take care of each other.
Walz, a military veteran, former teacher, and American high school football and basketball coach, highlighted how these parts of his personal biography prepared him for a life in politics.
But it was those players and my students who inspired me to run for Congress. They saw in me what I had hoped to instill in them, a commitment to the common good, an understanding that we're all in this together, and the belief that a single person can make a real difference for their neighbors.
As the final speaker, Walz punctuated the freedom theme of the night.
But when we Democrats talk about freedom, we mean the freedom to make a better life for yourself and the people that you love. Freedom to make your own health care decisions. And yeah, your kids' freedom to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in the hall.
Democrats wrap up this convention on Thursday evening with a marquee moment, the acceptance speech of the party's nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris. Ken Faribault, VOA News, from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
For more on Wednesday night speeches highlighted by former President Bill Clinton and Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz. And a preview of tonight's DNC finale, let's go to Carol Van Dam, who has been covering the DNC for VOA this week and is standing by live in Chicago. Hello, Carol. Tell us about last night's key speakers and what should we expect to hear tonight from Kamala Harris?
Well, let's first start talking a little more about Bill Clinton, the former president who's still one of the most popular presidents in recent memory in this country. And he had a lot of things to say. And, you know, he's such a good orator. He still hasn't lost his touch. He's older now, but he still has not lost his touch and getting people motivated behind what he's got to say. And one of the things that really stood out, I thought, was he wasn't afraid to take jabs directly at Donald Trump. And he said, you know, it's all about, you know, me, myself, and I, when you hear him speak. And he said, next time you listen to Donald Trump use his voice, he said, don't count the lies. He said, count the eyes. And by that, he means he's always saying, I this and I that, and talking about himself. And they had a couple other zingers, but as you just heard, the main theme of the speeches was freedom and patriotism. And they, you know, Democrats were saying, Republicans don't just get to be the ones to talk about patriotism. We're patriots, and we're talking about real freedoms and freedoms for the middle class people, and not to be, you know, paying the taxes of these corporations. And one thing that Tim Walz also said is, you know, we're not going to allow the corporations to pollute our air and our land and. You know, that's, and water. And that was one of the themes, too. It was environment and the schools, as you heard, you know, he wants to protect children. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you talk about what is Kamala Harris going to say tonight, she's going to talk about her roots as a middle class person growing up and talking about, you know, why she became a prosecutor, and that's because she wanted to protect people and protect people that were being sexually abused, young women, also protect people from being taken advantage of, which is what Tim Walz said too, by corporations, by banks, and you know, be the fighter, the warrior for the right. Downtrodden and the middle class people of America.
Carol, you've spoken to a lot of people in Chicago since you started covering this for us. What seems to appeal to Democrats when Kamala Harris and Tim Walz speak? What is in there that is telling these people, we want to vote for this too?
I think with Tim Walz, what you heard last night, and you know, they try to paint the picture of, he's just a down-home guy that really connects with people. And it's kind of funny because we understand that he didn't even ever use a teleprompter before practicing with one this week so that he could do this big speech. He's only been doing big speeches like this these last few weeks with Kamala Harris on the campaign trail at rallies. So he's not used to having people, tens of thousands of people to talk to. But from all accounts, the delegates were super excited and very happy with what he had to say, and feel like it was a home run as far as him talking about freedoms, and we're not going to allow Republicans to take those away from us.
Right, Carol, thank you so much for your reporting. VOA's Carol Van Dam reporting live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Now, for more on the Democratic National Convention, I'm joined live from here in Washington by Bruce Fein, an American lawyer specializing in constitutional and international law. Bruce, thank you for joining us. What are two main takeaways from the Democratic National Convention so far?
Well, from me, it may not be other takeaways, but what was conspicuous is the absence of the word justice as opposed to freedom or any other words. Our founding fathers said that the end of civil government, end of civil society was justice. And that includes everyone, including those babies and incubators dying in Gaza. So we conspicuously didn't see the understanding of justice, letting every person's station in life correspond to their character and abilities. The second thing that came away is certainly the element on unity, but I think they airbrushed out things that should be of concern to Americans. One, our unconditional supply of weapons to Israel being used to commit genocide and war crimes and otherwise in Gaza, in the West Bank. And there's not a word about that at all at the convention. There's still no explanation of how we're going to be repaying a $50 trillion national debt in another decade, where our children and children's children are going to be saddled with a bankrupt nation. The spending is out of control. We don't have a disciplined politics that imposes taxes commensurate to the spending. And we're going off a financial cliff. And neither party wants to say anything about, well, if you're a family, you know, how can you be in debt $50 trillion and think you can survive? So it's just another example, I believe, and I'm not trying to suggest the Democrats are any less culpable than the Republicans, just ignoring reality and the hard choices that have to be made.
Right. So how does the RNC, or the Republican National Convention, compare to the Democratic National Convention? You watched both of them so far. What's your take?
Well, I think that was quite foolish, because I think the RNC convention is focused on negative. You know, if you try to sell life insurance as death insurance, you're not going to get any buyers. And the Republicans, including Mr. Trump, and I think it would be more efficient if Mr. Clinton said he's a narcissist, a super narcissist, with fewer words to describe his character. It was all about all these terrible people. They're trying to destroy XYZ. There's very little positive in the Republican National Convention other than to try to destroy other people's lives, the cat ladies, and they hate other people if they enjoy themselves. Now, there's some people who get some kind of, I feel, adolescent gratification out of trying to be negative. But I think the Republican National Convention was not a success. But we'll just see whether or not you can get the turnout on the Democratic side. But I underscore, I think the real pathology of the country is neither party is addressing. We're going bankrupt, and we cannot and will not police the world, and we're ignoring all the miseries we're inflicting abroad by having unconditional warfare as our foreign policy.
So how do you think Tim Walz did in trying to make his case for the vice presidential role to the American people?
Well, the one thing you need to remember, it's very rare for a vice president to have any impact on a presidential decision whatsoever. Hewitt Humphrey had no impact on the LBJ. One of FDR's, Franklin Delano Roosevelt's vice president, said it wasn't worth a bucket of warm spit. So vice presidents, because there's very, very aggressive exclusion from the West Wing from the vice president's staff, they really are very, very unlikely to have any influence at all. If you ask Kamala Harris, whatever the influences she had on Joe Biden's decision, I don't know whether you can have any. I remember when President Dwight Eisenhower was president and Richard Nixon, his vice president, was running for nomination in 1960. They asked Mr. Eisenhower, well, what was Mr. Nixon's influence on your administration? Said, give me 2 or 3 weeks, maybe I can find something about it. So I think it's more optics than anything else. I've really never encountered a voter who said, my vote really turned on the vice president rather than president. So it's just the opposite.
Bruce, thank you so much. We will explore this as we get into the next few months before the elections. Bruce Fein is an American lawyer specializing in constitutional and international law. The United Nations says more than a dozen trucks from aid agencies have crossed into Sudan from the Adre border crossing with Chad to bring relief items into areas of the Darfur region that are threatened with famine. VOA's Philip Alexiou has the details.
More than a dozen trucks from aid agencies have crossed into Sudan from the Adre border crossing with Chad. According to United Nations spokesman for the Secretary General Stefan Dujarric, who says they're bringing relief items into areas of the Darfur region that are threatened with famine.
WFP says their trucks were carrying sorghum, pulses, oil, and rice that will benefit some 13,000 people who are at risk of famine in the Kerenaik area of West Darfur. For its part, IOM says the essential relief items delivered to Sudan will support more than 12,000 people in need.
Dujarric says the Adre crossing from Chad is the most effective and direct way to deliver aid to Sudan, and he says humanitarian colleagues are working with Sudanese authorities to keep a constant supply of food and nutritional goods flowing.
Where more than a dozen areas are either at risk or in risk of famine, WFP is scaling up food assistance there and aims to support more than 8 million men, women, and children by the end of this calendar year.
Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Sudan has exacerbated cholera infections, with the war-stricken country recording hundreds of cases since July. Sudanese Health Minister Haitham Mohamed Ibrahim said Wednesday the country has recorded 593 cases and 28 deaths since announcing the epidemic July 23rd. WHO and UNICEF have been cooperating with the Sudanese Health Ministry to spray chlorine and open treatment and isolation centers in locations that are heavily affected by the disease. Al-Gadaraf health official Mohammed Dawood says the influx of people due to the ongoing war is straining the city's resources, aiding in the spread of diseases. He says the 4.5 million displaced people have been a burden on services and resources like the availability of suitable toilets and the lack of proper sewage. Philip Alexio, VOA News.
Let us know what you think about Africa54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, a new commuter railway excites Tanzanians. We'll be right back.
The World Health Organization recommends that babies be exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life. Yet it has been reported that many mothers in Africa do not exclusively breastfeed their infants due to changing cultural norms and lactation challenges. On the next edition of Our Voices, we'll explore how breastfeeding can contribute significantly to the child's survival and look at options for new mothers to produce or get access to safe breast milk. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, violent attacks, land levies, and kidnappings are forcing many Nigerian farmers to abandon their lands, driving up food inflation. The government recently deployed 10,000 agro-rangers across 19 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Their mission is to safeguard farmland and mediate conflicts, especially in areas hit by farmer-herder clashes. Congo reported more than 1,000 new Mpox cases in the last week as African health authorities ask for desperately needed vaccines. Mpox belongs to the same family of viruses as smallpox, but causes milder symptoms like fever, chills, and body aches, and mostly spreads through close skin-to-skin contact, including sexual intercourse. And Stephanie Curry, the top United Nations official in Libya, is warning that the political, military, and security situation in the oil-rich North African country is deteriorating, and without renewed political talks leading to a unified government and elections, there will be likely be greater instability in Libya. In remote areas of Malawi, access to energy remains a challenge for people, including farmers. Now, with the introduction of new solar-powered machine, local farmers are hopeful that the technology-driven approach to agriculture will transform their lives for the better. Chimwemwe Padata has our report.
In northern Malawi's Mzimba district, the local NGO TN is piloting AFTRAC, a solar-powered tractor project. The project aims to boost crop yields and smallholder incomes while providing rural communities with access to clean, green electricity. Emire Gamanga, a 53-year-old farmer from Ashikweni, has been farming a 2-acre land with hand tools for the past 9 years. She's now one of over 20 farmers benefiting from a solar-powered tractor being tested in Malawi. Kamanga says that using hand tools has slowed down agricultural progress.
I will increase my area of cultivation. Using a hand hoe has been hard for the past years. I have been farming.
Arnold Green Soko, the chief in the area, hopes the solar-powered tractor will transform the lives of farmers as they move towards using modern technology.
We now have hope that our village will be food secure. The crops that we grow are used as food for our families, while some crop harvests are sold. The money that we realize from the sales assists our daily activities.
Agriculture think tanks are urging the government to work with agriculture technology inventors to make modern farming techniques available to smallholder farmers.
Has been on the cost part. Affordability, especially to the smallholder farmers. We've seen this for the large-scale farmers who have the capacity to do that. But for the smallholder farmers, it has been so difficult, mainly because these ones, they have like the small land sizes. And then for someone to think, okay, I'm going to get a tractor for this, that hasn't been easy to do.
Isaac Mojuchavula, TNE's country director, says the newly introduced solar tractor helps with land tilling, a major challenge for smallholder farmers.
They needed to maybe mechanize or find something better to till their land and then do it much faster so that they don't spend a lot of money or tilling the soils. Of course, we recommend that they till the soils when the soils are still soft.
After finalizing the pilot phase in Malawi, AFTRAC plans to scale the usage of the solar-powered tractor across sub-Saharan Africa.
We have ambitions to expand across sub-Saharan Africa, but at the moment, because we've only got one demonstration site, and we're now learning from that demonstration site.
Malawi's development blueprint, Malawi 2063, aims to modernize agriculture by using modern technologies to boost productivity. Experts believe that adopting tools like the solar tractor would advance the sector. Chimwemwe Padata, VOA Africa, Mzimba, Malawi.
A new electrified commuter railway in Tanzania is ready to modernize the country's travel. The 440-kilometer line built by a Turkish company connects Dar es Salaam and Dodoma. Tony Mlela, a Dar es Salaam-based tech entrepreneur, shares his thoughts on the newly completed project with VOA's Paul Ndiho.
With the economic transition that we're about to see, especially with the rail infrastructure, we know for a lot of years, many countries have developed vastly, especially by tapping into the natural resources and connecting these natural resources and connecting businesses and business hubs with the railway network. So the transition that we're about to see that's going to come from the from this project specifically, it's going to be tremendous. We're looking into right now. It used to take one person to get from Dar es Salaam, the commercial city, to the capital city about 8 hours. But right now it's about 3.5 hours, and you're there. So you can be in the capital city in the morning and be back at the commercial city by the night.
For example, the Kenyan SGR from Mombasa to Kisumu. We've seen the one from Ethiopia to Djibouti. But these massive projects come with a lot of challenges, especially the debt that comes along with these projects is massive. In the case of Tanzania, how do you think people can get around that?
The main business in the SGR project, it's not even transporting, I would say, citizens, but mainly it's for the cargo. As we know, Tanzania is a hub and it's connected to a lot of countries in different borders. So that means we're looking at cutting down the time of when, if a ship arrives in Dar es Salaam port, we're looking into maybe somebody in Rwanda can get their cargo in less than 2 days. I believe the government is making different strides, especially with the development that we're seeing from the port. Because right now there are strategic partners at the port operating the port. We're looking into, they have been able to cut down the time where you receive your goods at the port and all the way to to the final destination.
How important is this SGR? Is it going to create employment that is on merit based, or is one of those things that is going to create employment for the sons and daughters of the who is who in the country?
Honestly speaking, I would say we have seen a lot of people, and especially youth, involved in the SGR project. And so far, it has created tremendous amount of employment, especially to the youth. As we know, SGR involves a lot of technology and a lot of youth are tech savvy. So we have seen a lot of youth getting employment, especially in these new projects. And as they keep expanding into other areas, we see a lot of, even in the construction, in the construction phase of the project, we see a lot of youth, especially the engineers. We see a lot of youth involved. So this also is one of the biggest cornerstones, especially in the employment sector for the youth.
That was Tony Mlela, a Dar es Salaam, Tanzania-based tech entrepreneur speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. And that wraps up our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.